Welcome, folks. It is Andrew here, and you are listening or watching another exciting episode of HomeKit Insider. And with me, I have my faithful, pilfering nickel licker, Stephen Robles. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I heard liquor. What was that? Helpful what?
I don't know what you do in your free time, Stephen. That is not for me to police.
Now, wait a minute.
We have no time for your hobbies today because we have surprise stuff to talk about that Apple dropped on us.
Last week, okay, so first of all, I'd be curious your theory on this. I'm going to talk about this on the Apple Insider podcast also. But it really feels like Apple had an event. Maybe it was supposed to be for November, maybe December, but they had 3 press releases last week as you listen to this. They talked about Black History Month in one, new Unity band, but they also had the press release for M2 Pro, M2 Max, MacBook Pro, Mac Mini. Then new HomePod. What? And it was a wonderful week with all of those announcements. They had a 20-minute video for the M2 stuff, and then they had the HomePod video. Like, it really felt like this was all from some phantom Apple event. What do you think? Do you think that was supposed to be an event?
I mean, it definitely seems likely. We had heard a lot of stuff that the new pros were coming at the end of last year, and like that's where like the rumor mill sometimes gets like confusing because some stuff is saying for sure it's coming at the end of the year, and then other people are saying, oh no, it's coming in the beginning of next year and stuff like that. So it definitely seems, more than likely that Apple had an event. We saw, like obviously you could look at the URL string and see that the actual video stream was coming from a file from 2022, and Apple's USDZ AR files were compiled back again in October 2022. Apple usually doesn't have these like renders for new products done until a couple weeks before an event. So it all lines up to that. I am curious why they didn't have more of a promotional video then, though, for the HomePod, because they only had like a 2-minute or like a minute and a half commercial kind of touting stuff. Maybe Apple pulled that after they didn't want to kind of highlight the fact that it was like clearly a larger keynote from last year. I don't know. Or maybe Apple always intended to do just a press release for the MacBook Pros, and they were going to drop that keynote style video last year, same as they did now. They were just going to do it earlier. But I think the Macs were definitely planned for late last year. Apple clearly had some production delays, the 14 Pro, getting that on track. So whatever reason, it makes sense that it was coming out earlier. But hey, this is where we are. Annual release in like 10 years, 13 years, whatever it's been.
Well, I'm excited because HomePod is back. Big HomePod. This was the announcement. Apple has resurrected the full-size HomePod. It is starting at $299, which was the last price of the big HomePod the first time. The first HomePod announced it was $350, went down to $299. But now this new HomePod is very interesting. 2 less tweeters and microphones. So it's a little different that way. It looks very similar. The screen on top seems to be larger, powered by the S7 chip, but also supports Matter, has Thread, and it actually has a temperature and humidity sensor, and we'll get to that also coming to the HomePod Mini, or at least being activated. But I immediately ordered 2, and I'm very excited to get them. So there you go. You can use them as like a stereo pair, just like before. You can't pair a new one with an old one. Can't do that. And if you're going to use it with like an Apple TV, you can pair these, 2 new ones, and it'll give you Dolby Atmos or whatever. But you can't do like a 5-speaker setup yet. Some people were hoping you could do like 2 big HomePods in the front and then a HomePod Mini for like a center and rear. Like, no, you can't do that. You just get the pair. But very exciting. I'm happy about this. Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited in a kind of few different ways, because on one hand, I was still pulling out hope for like a screen one, and even like Brian Tong was like commenting. He was like, this is good, but I definitely would have been more convinced with like a Google Nest Hub style one. And funny enough, like we actually had reports that like Gurman, I think, was out saying that Apple's actively working on those, and it will be released like sooner rather than later. Like, what were all the details you shared about that one?
Strange.
Because it's been such a busy
HomePod
week.
Ultra. That's the HomePod Ultra.
Exactly.
When it comes out with the screen.
But yeah, that sounds like it's still in the works, and I think I was more excited for that one. For me, my original problem with the original HomePods was that they were a little bit base heavy for things I wanted to do, and they were overkill for a lot of rooms. Like, you don't need a big HomePod in like bedrooms, so they were a little overkill.
False.
And I don't think that Apple...
You can use a stereo pair in a closet.
And I don't think Apple fully addressed all of the Like, Apple just came out with a slightly updated version of the new HomePod for basically the same price that it was discontinued at. So I'm a little surprised they didn't address more of its issues. But I do want to say, regarding the fewer tweeters, fewer microphones, and didn't it also drop a band in Wi-Fi?
Yeah, the original was Wi-Fi AC, which is almost the fastest standard right now, which I think is equivalent to Wi-Fi 6. But the new HomePod is Wi-Fi N now, which is a much older standard, and for a device that doesn't connect via Ethernet, feels really strange for that to be the thing that you drop in quality. Like, I would rather you drop the Bluetooth or something before dropping the Wi-Fi speed.
Yeah, so I don't get that. That's a little peculiar. But for audio quality, I don't think there's going to be any issue here with the decreased stuff. I mean, Apple's microphones on the HomePod Mini are fantastic, and I don't think that's going to be an issue with the new ones. I also don't think there's going to be an issue with audio quality. The Verge actually had a very brief hands-on with the new HomePod already before they're released on February 3rd, and they said it sounds basically like the old one did. And Apple isn't even touting any necessarily improved audio quality here, just, that they sound great. That's kind of what their pitch is, and that was fair. Apple has maybe some better tuning here for some of the things. I'm hoping for a little bit tighter bass that doesn't feel as sloppy sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still excited about it. I think this is what we needed. I think Apple needed the larger version, especially with Dolby Atmos support for your Apple TV. It also explains, Steven, we showed the boxes on Apple TVs and stuff that showed the full-size HomePod. It wasn't the old one. It was the new one that just had not released yet.
It was the new one.
So I don't know.
I do think it's interesting. I looked back. TechCrunch, I think, got the statement from Apple. This was March 2021, so almost 2 years ago. But Apple did say we are discontinuing the original HomePod. And I tweeted that out, and some people are like, well, yeah, they discontinued the original Model 1. This is Model 2. But I do think, I can't remember a time where Apple literally said we are discontinuing this model, really implying that it's going away as a product line, and they were sticking with the Mini, and then resurrected 2 years later. I thought maybe MagSafe, MagSafe was a thing where it went away with the 2016 MacBook Pros. Didn't hear from it for 5-6 years, and then it came back. But this, I don't know. It feels like a unique thing for Apple to be like, yeah, we're discontinuing that big one. Oh, nobody read books anymore. Just kidding. Okay. We're going to get the big one.
Here's my theory. Here's my theory, Steven.
Well, I'm glad.
The original HomePod did not sell great. It was too expensive. And when they even dropped the price, their margin was crunched. Because they still had a ton of tech in there. I mean, they were doing stuff like putting in a motion sensor so that when you moved the HomePod, it was able to reanalyze the audio and tune it again for the room. So with this new one, I think Apple, moved to the S-Series chip, which is probably cheaper to produce than the A-Series, even though it might be more powerful for speakers here. I think Apple reduced the components in it. You were less microphones, less tweeters, removed the motion sensor, downgraded the Wi-Fi a little bit. So we're going to have savings in component costs. And Apple's now able to add things that it needed, like Thread/Matter support, as well as adding the new temperature and humidity sensors to add new features. And Apple's done enough on the software side. We'll talk about software in a moment. But I think Apple's done enough on the software side to boost it, and I think it needed those couple years. So my thought was, okay, Apple had the HomePod out. They were moving to Matter and Thread, which the new one did not, or the old one did not support. This new standard that Apple was doing. Even the Apple TVs had it, and it needed to cut component costs on it. So I think it sold well enough to keep the product, but it needed to kind of just discontinue that model, rework it, and then re-release it. And they could have just kept selling the other one with a tighter margin, but then you would have had the issue of no thread and stuff, which would have been confusing. And this way they could kind of just get rid of it, work on it, re-release it, kind of fixed, cheaper, and ready to go.
Fair enough. Well, the other exciting part of this whole announcement, though, is that via software, 16.3, all the 16.3s and macOS what is it, 13.2, I think. All of it's probably coming out this week as you are listening to this episode, so look for those software updates. But this update is also improving the HomePod Mini. Yes, all those HomePod Minis that you bought over the last 2 years, because the OG HomePod is gone, it actually enables the temperature and humidity sensor. And if you remember, viewers and listeners, that was kind of like uncovered in the teardowns back when HomePod Mini launched, and everybody was like, why is this in here? Amazing that now it will be activated, and with the 16.3 update, along with other features like retuning for spoken audio, you'll be able to do better Siri automations, even setting recurring HomeKit automations via Siri. You'll be able to use the temperature and humidity sensor in the HomePod Mini. It'll be a card in the Home app. Andrew's going to tell us about it because he actually tried it. The RC, the release candidate is out now, and it enables this. And the new big HomePod also will be in the Home app. So you have a HomePod Mini there. You did the RC thing. How's it work? How's it go with the humidity and temperature?
This is actually a massive update. There's a ton of new features here that you usually would not see in a point release like this. You would definitely see this in honestly, I feel like this was supposed to be in HomePod update 7 or 16 in the fall, probably with the release of the new big HomePods. And here we are. Apple delayed probably the big HomePod and held on to some of those software features until the new HomePod was ready. Because really, HomePod's update 16 didn't have that much in it, but 16.3 will. And I'm not going to 100% say that 16.3 comes out this week, because the new big HomePod doesn't come out until February 3rd. So one more week from this Friday. So I think there's always the potential that Apple holds on that update until the following week. I'm just putting an asterisk by it. We know everything else is dropping this week because of the new Macs that are launching on Friday, but HomePod is one more week later. So I could see Apple holding that software update off. But regardless, we have some cool stuff here. So so the temperature humidity sensors, when you first update your HomePod Mini to 16.3, it's going to take a few minutes to calibrate these sensors, but then they're going to show up in those little widgets on the top of your room. Whatever room encompasses your HomePod Mini, you'll see those up there. Just alongside your Eve sensors, the Baro sensors, whatever other ones that you have. One distinct difference is that so far, it appears that the new sensors inside of the HomePod Mini won't show to third-party apps, which is peculiar. It's similar to how AirPlay stuff only shows in the Home app, but not third-party apps. Weird kind of workarounds like that. So I don't know if that's going to change at all, but I am running 16.3 on my phone and running 16.3 on the HomePods, and I'm not seeing in third-party apps yet. So we'll see if that changes at all afterward, but that's how it sits right now. Another thing to note is these will not work if you've got a stupid cold environment. If your house is 30 degrees Fahrenheit, these are not going to be super accurate. These still produce a little bit of heat. So in normal house temperatures, I found them to be very accurate compared to my dedicated sensors. Compared to my Ecobee, compared to the Eve sensors that I have, these are pretty much spot on with what those are reporting. But when you get really low, your humidity and your temperature are going to be off, because this thing is going to make still a little bit of heat as it's running. Beyond these new sensors, also, of course you can use these sensors for whatever you want. If that wasn't clear for anyone that was listening, do all sorts of stuff with these things. So you can create automations. You can ask Siri what the temperature or the humidity is in a room. Turn on a humidifier if the humidity in the room drops below a certain threshold that you have maybe plugged into a smart plug, or if you have one of the new ones that are coming out very soon. So there's some neat stuff going on with those sensors. But I also want to talk about all these other new features, Steven. So maybe you can clear this one up for me, because you have used, I think, the ambient sounds more than I have. So Apple says, this is verbatim from release notes, remastered ambient sounds are more immersive and can now be added to scenes, automations, and alarms in the Home app. Someone told me on Twitter that they were able to previously include ambient sounds in automation scenes and stuff like that. So is that do you know how that's changed for sure? Because I wasn't certain, other than just being more immersive and sounding better.
I mean, maybe with shortcuts you could do that.
You're still running 16.2, right?
Remastered, like quality wise.
Take a look at that. I'll walk through these other ones. See what you see, because now that I'm all updated, I couldn't verify what it did before. So I'm curious if you could include them or not. But someone told me that you could, and I didn't have a firm answer on that.
This is in a HomeKit.
Apple says scenes,
like
automations, and alarms inside of the Home app. So not even in the shortcuts or anything, directly in the Home app. So I'm curious what you find out. So while you check that, the next new feature here is Find My now works with people on the HomePod. So you could just ask, of course, my wife and I have Find My set up. I can just say, hey, where's Faith? And it'll tell me, oh, she is at home. She is at work. She is, in Dublin. Whatever the case is, it'll be able to report that back to you, which I think is super handy. You could always use Find My on the HomePod, like find your phone. But I love that you can just ask where people are. That's really easy to be able to check, like, how far away are they, if they're heading home, whatever the case is. But for family members, I think that's really a nice update to have.
Yes, that is cool. So I just checked, and it looks like when you create a scene, add one of your HomePod minis, if you wanted to play music, when you choose play audio or choose audio, it just brings up like the Apple Music browser. So you can choose like albums and stuff. It does not give you the ability to do the ambient background sounds, which is available in like accessibility. Yeah. So it seems like those will be available now where you can do like rain, ocean, whatever as some of those. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. I do like the Find My thing too, because I used to actually have a shortcut set up, because you can set up a shortcut even now in 16.2 that it says like find this person in your Find My. And it seemed like I was able to ask my HomePods with that shortcut name, like do the Hey Dingus shortcut name, and it would tell me. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but it did not work recently. So I deleted all those shortcuts. So I'm glad this is just like a built-in feature. You can just say, where is my kid? And you say the kid's name, or where is your spouse? And it'll just tell you. I'm curious, sometimes you can actually label locations in the Find My app.
Well, also on their actual contact cards.
But if they're not
so if you add like a work and stuff like that.
Correct. But I'm curious, like if they're right. So I'm curious if they're like at Chipotle or whatever, and you haven't saved that address in anything. If you ask your HomePod, where's my husband or whatever, and I'm at Chipotle, does it say like an address? Will it try and use Apple Maps to approximate a business name?
I'm going to try it because I did not get a chance. This all dropped like by the time I was updating and writing everything, it was in the evening. Faith was home, so I did not get a chance to try. It's Faith's home when I asked. So like I do need to try. Like, girl, go to the store or something, and let me ask Siri where you are and see how it responds for stuff like that. Yeah, go stand
to the middle of nowhere
and see what Siri will tell me about that. So new Find My features there. We also have this new recurring automation stuff. This is clutch. So before you could do kind of like the timers, right? See, like you say, turn on a light for 20 minutes or whatever. But now you can say like, hey, close the living room blinds at 5:30, and it'll do it. And I love this, being able to set up so many just recurring ones like that, or like every day do this, and you can just program it using your voice instead of having to manually program in the Home app. For something as simple as like open the blinds at 7:30 every weekday will work. And I think that is so cool. And it did work reliably. Yes. I tested it out on some lights in my shades, and I was like, just close the living room shades at 5:30. And it's like, okay, we'll close the living room shades at 5:30 p.m. today. And just like that one time, it'll close them. So I'm super excited about this. I think that's going to make it a lot easier to do that stuff. And there's a new confirmation tone, because HomePods know what room they're in. If you're controlling an accessory in a different room, it'll play like a button when like as a confirmation that scene or that command was successfully triggered. Because you may not be able to see those accessories, or they may not have a visible change. So if you're doing something else where there's not like a visible difference to it, or you can't see it because it's in a different room, it's going to give you confirmation so you know that it was successfully implemented. Right. And I think that's also a very smart addition.
Yes. I love that, because I'll sometimes ask, who to change the temperature, and that's not something you'll see. Like if I'm in the bedroom and I ask it to change the temperature, I have no idea. And sometimes I'll go to the Home app just to make sure it actually heard me. But that little confirmation tone will be nice. I was curious, the feature right before that, the automated reminders. If you ask Siri with the new update, do this with the blinds every Monday, does it create that automation so you can see it in the Home app, or does it kind of just live in the ether? Like, I assume that there's some scene or automation created when you ask Siri.
I assume it's got to be in there
that,
because you have to have a way to remove it, right? You can't just create it and then, yeah. So, I mean, I could possibly try it real quick here. If I mute my microphone and ask Siri, we can explore this.
I'll tell you what, I can thank our sponsor, and then you can let us know what happens. How about that? Let's do that. Perfect, because our wonderful sponsor today is our friend Collide. Now, the challenge with endpoint security has always been that it's difficult to scale. And when remote work took over, that challenge got exponentially harder. You need, sorry, Andrew's like talking to Siri right now, and it's amazing. You need visibility into your fleet of devices in order to meet security goals and reduce service desk tickets. Nobody likes service desk tickets. There's a great TikTok account of a guy doing like parodies of like IT tickets. It's hilarious. Anyway, how do you get that visibility when different parts of your company run on Mac, Windows, and Linux? You get Collide. Collide is an endpoint security solution that gives IT teams a single dashboard for all devices, regardless of their operating system. And Collide gives you real-time access to your fleet's data and can do things that traditional mobile device managers cannot. And instead of installing intrusive agents or locking down devices, I've been places that agent, especially if you have a Mac, that little agent lives in the menu bar, is just staring at you the whole time. It drives you nuts. And Collide doesn't do that. Collide takes a user-focused approach that communicates security recommendations to your employees directly on Slack. It's great. You can answer every question you have about your fleet without intruding on your workforce. So visit collide.com/HomeKit to find out how. And if you follow that link, they'll hook you up with a goodie bag just for activating a free trial. That's KOLIDE.com/HomeKit. Collide.com/HomeKit. That link is also in the bio. Free goodie bag, free trial. Thanks to Collide for sponsoring this episode. Did you have time to figure out what it do?
I do, and it works exactly as you would expect.
Very
so
good.
I just ask my little favorite robot companion to turn on the studio lights every day at 5 p.m. And after a couple second or two of Siri thinking, she came back and she's like, "Okay, I set your lights in the studio to turn it on at 5 p.m. starting today." And then I go. I think you turn on the brightness a little bit, but I go to my Home app, and I still Slack notifications coming in. Do.
It will focus. Stay on target.
Will it,
stay
Steven?
on target. No, it won't. It refuses. It's not focused on your face either. It's like focused on your wall. The bricks are super sharp. Yeah, this is a high quality video. Anyway, we'll believe you. Oh, there it is.
So look at that. All the lights here in the studio, 5 p.m. So it does exactly what you would think. You can remove the automation, turn it on and off, whatever you need to do. But it does exactly what you'd expect.
Got it. Okay, very cool.
Yeah, I love it. So cool.
That's great update. Again, should be coming out soonish. The new HomePod is available February 3rd. Yeah, February 3rd, Friday.
3rd, yes.
You can order it right now. I don't know how the delivery times are looking. I ordered mine so fast I didn't even get a chance to to see if it got delayed. I'll check that out. But very exciting.
Do you know what's not coming, Steven?
What's not coming?
It's not coming. The Airport Ultra, and I feel bad for so many people. Yeah. My Twitter timeline is full of people complaining that they thought it was real, and I feel slightly bad.
Oh no! That means you did a good job with that Photoshop. That's what that means. But yeah, people.
I mean, last I looked, it was sitting at like 2,500 likes or something, and like over 100 comments. A lot of people. Also, a lot of people, Steven, were getting very angry about it. Like, oh yeah, so Apple can spy on you more. I'm like, that's the hill that you want to climb? Like, what else are you going to use that you feel is more private than an Apple router?
They literally built Private Relay to help you disguise your internet traffic from everyone, including themselves. Like iCloud Advanced Data Protection. Like, not even they have the keys to your data. Like, that seems like something strange.
And literal HomeKit routers that can block, devices and stuff from even accessing. Like,
dirt. I don't understand.
I was set off, and I responded to a couple of those comments
Don't feed the trolls, Andrew. That's
I know.
what
I
happens.
had
You
to
can't
stop
feed
because
them.
because some people got very angry very fast. And I was like, oh no, I should not have went down
Oh,
this
you can't
road.
do it.
But
Don't do
also,
it.
come on, how nice would that be? A new airport router, mesh, time
It'd be nice.
capsule, HomeKit support. Like, I just still
It'd
want
be
it.
nice.
I know it's not real,
It'd be nice.
but
It'd be nice though. I'm with you. All right, I want to hear about your Yale Safe review, but before we get to that, a CES roundup, kind of last word on CES. You did a big roundup of all your kind of favorite things there. So tell me, Andrew, what were some of the favorite things from CES?
Oh man, there was still a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of stuff this year that I kind of stumbled upon that I found more kind of they were smart home things that didn't feed into HomeKit. Not because like HomeKit was like lacking in those areas, but because there's not specific places in HomeKit for like a bird feeder. Like that's not a HomeKit category. But I still thought they were really neat. So there was a few things on this list just to call out. So I really like the Bird Buddy bird feeders. They're like modular. There's one that has like the camera built in, and there's solar panels on the top and a battery in the back, and you can like swap these pieces out to make it like self-contained. And I think that is so cool to be able to check on any birds that are there. We also talked about the Rise gardens that I think are super cool. Technically, you could control these lights with HomeKit, and maybe that will be a thing eventually, but I really like these indoor smart gardens. The Trova Home is a really nice smart safe for your house. It can be bolted down if you wanted to. There's USB ports on the inside to charge anything that you might have to put in there. It's got like a silicone seal, so smells can't come out of there. Medication, whatever you got, but a really neat little smart home safe that I thought was cool. This Noesis, I think it's Noesis Florio vacuum and mop. This one, I believe we might talk about this briefly, but its thing is that it actually replaces the pads on the bottom each time, so you don't have that liquid buildup and dirty wastewater that you have to clean. It actually just swaps out the bottom like a Swiffer pad. It backs in, the old one is removed, and a new one is installed. And you even set that on a per room basis. So you could do things like clean the bathroom, mop the bathroom, and then go to a different room and not worry about, cross-contamination between the rooms. So I thought that was super unique and really cool. Skipping down a little bit, there's some cool kitchen tech, like the GE Profile stand mixer is really neat. It's a very smart mixer. You put on the attachments almost like you're putting into like an impact driver drill. There's a weight scale on the top, so you can measure your ingredients as you put in, and it has like a force recognition sensor on the beater. So if you're making something like pizza dough, it'll be able to tell like when your pizza dough is sufficiently kneaded. And they're adding more of those like recipes and stuff over time. So ideally, you could just drop your stuff in and then walk away, and it's going to handle everything. And it won't do it based on time, but on actual, elasticity of the dough. So I thought that was cool.
That's cool.
Brava oven. These things been around. There's a camera inside. Yeah. Bartesian smart cocktail mixer, and they have a new version that only has 2 holders for liquors. So if maybe you just really like margaritas and gin and tonics, you can keep those there, and then you don't have to have like the 4 setup with more liquors on it. Synology's got a new NAS, the DS723 Plus. This thing has 2 bays. They hold 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch drives, and the bottom even has 2 slots for M.2 SSDs. So you can put those in there. And it is, I think, the first one to be outfitted with a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. That's like an optional upgrade that just snaps into the back. So pretty sweet.
Nice.
And then finally, there's this massive sous vide machine from Typher. It has a huge touchscreen on the top of it. They've thought of like all these little details. If you ever cook sous vide, Steven, they have their own vacuum sealer that clips onto the bags, and then it magnetically attaches to the side of the body, so you don't need a dedicated vacuum sealer for it. There's little snap-on weights to keep the bags at the bottom of the water bath so that they're not floating to the top. So they've sorted that out. It's got a large water basin, so you can cook like your vegetables, your steaks, or your proteins all at once in one place. And the touchscreen walks you through everything. There's little videos of each of the recipes. When you are cooking something like steak, you can tell how thick the steak is. Is it fresh or is it frozen? and what your desired temperature will be, including like with photos of all the different temperatures. So it's a really neat thing. It's a little bit on the large side if you're keeping it out every day, but they told me that because of the massive recipe catalog, they're hoping people will use it more frequently and for more dishes other than just proteins. Like I've cooked things like creme brulee and potatoes in a sous vide, and I think they're trying to bring more visibility to the other dishes because most everyone just uses it for proteins. So I like that idea. It's just still kind of a big device. But yeah, so some cool other smart stuff that I saw at a CES.
That is very cool. We'll put the link in show notes, of course, to check it out. I like that bird feeder idea, actually, with the camera thing. But
they came out with a new hummingbird one this year.
Oh. It's not for sale yet, though, right?
I don't know.
You can't. Okay, I'll check it out. If I find a for sale link, I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
But, okay, very cool. Well, I want to hear your Yale Safe review. To give you a little breather, I just want to mention very quickly before I forget. I talked about the Hue button last time. I was talking about a bunch of different buttons, and I was upset because the Hue button couldn't be used in HomeKit. Well, I was actually mistaken. Listener Simon Salvin, he's always famous. He's got lots of HomeKit stuff. He's always recommending and suggesting things. So he told me in the Hue app where I was doing the configure in another app for the Hue button, just that single button, when you tap that, it says not configurable in Apple Home or whatever. That's a lie. Okay, it's a lie. If you say configure in another app and then just leave it alone in the actual Home app, the Hue button just like appears, like it's just there. Like the Hue button is there, and you can actually control it, and it's just a single press button. You know what I mean? Like there are better buttons out there. You get the double press. This is just a single press, but you can totally program it in the Apple Home app with HomeKit. And it sets a scene, and yeah, it's the Hue button. Like it's right there. So Hue app, it lies, and you can totally do the Hue button in the Apple Home app. So thank you, Simon, for recommending and suggesting that. Now I have another button that I can use my HomeKit scenes with. So there you go.
Nice.
I imagine other Hue buttons are the same. I think he has a bunch of buttons. He sent me a picture. He's got like Hue buttons like lining a couch or whatever. And so you can do this with multiple Hue buttons. It works. And it's a nice button. It feels nice. It's really only one function. Again, like if you just want one button, but I've been putting buttons everywhere. I got another Aqara button, which we talked about last week, the little Aqara, this thing. And what I did was I hid it, Andrew, like inside where my fridge is. There's like a little gap between the fridge and the cabinetry or whatever. So I hid it in there. You can't see it. Nobody can see it. Nobody knows it's there. But I hid this button. It's a secret button. And what I do was one button turns on all the kitchen and living room lights because it's one big room. And then 2 clicks and it shuts everything off like for the evening. Nobody knows. Nobody knows, Andrew. And no one listens to this podcast who lives in this house, so it doesn't matter. And so it's my secret Aqara button, and I was pretty happy about that. But anyway, that's the Hue button. Thank you, Simon, for that. Now, your Yale Safe review, I was very excited about this safe. I want to know, you said it's a little buggy. The headline says, but buggy. Why is it buggy, Andrew? What happened with this safe?
So we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, right, Stephen? And the main issue was the initial setup that I ran into, and just the Yale app not feeling polished. So I don't have like a ton of additional points to cover from our last week's kind of hands-on with it. But yeah, that's still been my experience. But luckily, you don't have to use that Yale app much post setup. Like I use it to set it up, configure passcodes and everything, and then it's been good to go. So after reading through the review, what other questions did you have? Because I know you were debating on buying this thing. What's your thoughts now after seeing kind of the full review?
And is it still confirmed that 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper fits in this thing? Did you actually try to put any paper in there?
It's easily will fit an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if I've got paper lying around.
Because some of those tags are like a folder paper. Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, how does that fit in there?
Okay, I got all my HomeKit alerts.
The safe.
I got all my HomeKit alerts, and yes,
was that keypad in the? Was that keypad in the shot when you just put in your number?
No.
Okay, good. I was just making sure.
There's a piece of paper in there.
Perfect. And if
That's
it's a
it.
folder around a piece of paper, it looks like that would fit too.
Easily.
Very cool.
Easily.
Easily.
It is not light. That's probably a good thing.
Struggling. Yeah, you want it heavy. We still don't know about fire resistance, right?
I don't think that it is. I mean, you are going to have like some like the between like the front parts. There are like those kind of I guess you like the mounting holes that are on the back. I would not call this a fireproof safe by any means.
Sure. Okay. Well, no, otherwise, I mean, as long as it fits a sheet of paper and I can put my documents in there, I'm good. So I'm probably going to get one of these. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Did you include it in any automations? You showed how you could, but
it would act just like a regular lock. But the problem is you can't do an automation for locking it because at least for me, like the door kind of hangs open. Like when you open it, the door kind of falls open a little bit.
Yeah.
And and I don't think it's tilting. But then, so if the door is hung open and you hit lock, it's not going to close the door and then lock all of the bolts. So you wouldn't be able to set an automation to like automatically lock when you leave your house necessarily. Maybe if you do purposefully lean it back just a hair to keep the door like unlocked, but you could then lock it as you leave. That would be a possibility, but no, for a safe, I don't have it really in many automations, but it is just nice being able to ask Siri can you unlock the safe? And it just happens.
Right.
That I found to be most useful.
Yeah. And like with most locks, if you ask Siri on your watch or your phone, it will open it. If you do it on like a HomePod, it probably won't unlock it, right? Like,
but no, I think it does. This is always a fuzzy area, man. But like I have automations that run like Good Night that locks the doors and it works just fine that I tell through the HomePod.
But does it unlock is the question.
I would guess, but I think part of it is the voice recognition, like the identities thing. Like maybe if you don't have that personalization thing on, then it won't know who's who in your house, and it won't know what you have control over.
Right. Okay. Curious. Well, I'll let you know if I get one. This is so tempting. You can get it on Amazon right now, although if you buy on Amazon, it says February 26th as when it's available. It seems like you can buy it through the Yale website like right now, and it would probably deliver faster. So we'll put a link to that. Looks cool. I like it. I'll let you know again. All right. Real quick before we go, there was an email from Dan B. He sent me because I was talking about the Wemo Stage and how it's been pretty buggy, or at least laggy, like it's slow to respond compared to other buttons. He said, reset it and re-add it, and it should be more responsive. I've done that multiple times. Pretty much every time I've changed the battery on this thing, I'll like factory reset it. And it is more responsive upon reset. I just don't want to reset this button all the time. Like I reset it a few weeks ago, and it's already started slowing down again. Like I'll double click a button to set like a scene to film or whatever, like for this video podcast, and it's a good like 30 seconds before everything responds. Whereas my little Akara button or an Eve button, rock solid. I'm just saying. So it's still cool. You can still get way more controls out of a Wemo Stage, but I don't know, man. It's slow. It seems slow. Anyway. And then there was one question about, was it relay switches for you?
Yeah, we had talked about this in last week's episode with because I was putting in all those Nanoleaf bulbs into our master bathroom, and I was like setting scenes with them and stuff like that. But the problem arose of like how to control them because you have the wall switch, and I'm still looking for a good solution. And I had a lot of people messaging me and tweeting at me and emailing me that I should try various relay switches. There's a bunch of different manufacturers that make these. But the problem with these relay switches, from my understanding, Stephen, is they're basically making your regular light switch smart so that you can control that light switch from HomeKit with your voice, stuff like that. But they're still cutting the power to the bulbs. So if I were to control that switch from HomeKit or by toggling it, it's still going to cut the power to the smart bulbs. So they're meant to be used with dumb devices like a regular light bulb, a fan, a ceiling fan, stuff like that. Because then otherwise you have both of them being smart and they both need to be on and active. Essentially, I need the relay switch to act as a HomeKit button. And when you flip the switch, it issues a button command to turn on the lights or turn them off, depending on their state. And I don't believe that's what any of these relay switches do. I'd still love to see if anybody else knows an option, or if you know any options, Stephen. But that's kind of where I am. So I still don't have a great way to control these with a physical switch in the room.
Okay. Well, listeners, if you have a solution for Andrew, tweet at him. His Twitter handle is in the show notes. I think our Mastodons are in there too. I'll be honest, when all the news was coming out last week, and I was like, I want to excitedly tweet about this stuff, I had zero thought of going on Mastodon and doing it. I know maybe that's just me. It really, Twitter still feels like the place to go when it's breaking news. But anyway, we have those Mastodon accounts, and so those are there. Email us, watch us, youtube.com/HomeKit Insider, and send us your questions, your projects, send us images of what you're working on. We'd love to share them with all of our listeners and viewers. And let us know what you think of the whole screen share. Is going to try a different format with this episode, and let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
See y'all.